Hello, welcome. So in this video we are going to look at how the zygote develops to become the baby. We're going to look at the changes that happens from week 1 to week 2 to the last week when the baby is big and cute. So let's begin. We all know the story. The sperm will meet the egg and they will form a zygote. So here is the zygote. Right here is the zygote. Okay, let's draw a line to show the zygote. The zygote. And the zygote is inside the fallopian tube. And it's going to travel through the fallopian tube. And finally, we'll go to the uterus and move inside the endometrium. Endometrium is what? The wall of the uterus. Now let's look at what happens when it is traveling into the uterus. Now, about 24 hours after fertilization, the zygote is going to divide into 2 cells. Now, sometimes we call these cells as blastomeres. Let me write the name. Blastomeres. But they're just what? Cells. Okay, you can call them cells. They are 2 cells. And from 2 cells, they will divide to form 4 cells, and from 4 cells to 8 cells. Now, what we can see is that the cells are dividing from 2 to 4 to 8, but there is no growth. They are not getting bigger. They're just dividing. And we call this division as what? Cleavage. Cleavage. So what is cleavage? It is what? Division with no growth. They're dividing from 2 cells to 4 cells to 8 cells, but they are not getting bigger. Now, the next stage is that the 8 cells are going to divide to form about 16 cells, which we call as morula. So morula is what? About a 16 cell stage or structure. Sometimes we write it as 16 to 32 cells. Okay, anything between that we can still call as morula. Now morula will be formed around day 4. So let's write that down. Around what day? About day 4. Okay. Now after that, we start to see big changes. What change do we see? Change number 1 is that the cells inside the morula will group at one side. So here are they. I'm going to draw it in this color. So what do we see? The cells have grouped at one side. And when they group at one side, they create a space. Right here, let me use a different color. Draw the space, a green one. So they have created what? A space. Now, we call the cells which group at one side as inner cell mass, and the space which was created as blastocell. So this is what? Blastocell is what? A space which was created, space. Now, around the structure, we have some cells. Let me use blue color to show them these cells. They are around what? The structure. We call those cells as trophoblast. Trophoblast. Okay. So what happened? We had a morula, which was 16 cell, and now some of the cells, we can say some of the cells have moved what? To one side, which form the inner cell mass, and because they move at one side, there is a space which we call as blastocell, and they are surrounded by a group of cells we call as trophoblast. Now this structure over here we call as blastocyst or blastula. So we went from morula and now we have formed a blastocyst. Sometimes you hear blastocyst, sometimes blastula, but blastocyst is usually used for when we are talking about humans and other mammals. Let's write that down, mammals. And blastula are used for other organisms which are not mammals. Now, let's go on. Let's continue the story. So we formed a morula. Now we have formed a blastocyst. So here is the blastocyst, and it is moving where? Inside the uterus, and finally is going to go into the endometrium. Now all of these changes are going to happen on week number 1. Okay, so we are now at week 2. Let's see what happens at week 2. At week 2, the blastocyst is going to move inside the endometrium, and we call this as implantation. In step 1, the zona pellucida, this pink cover or layer, is going to disappear. And in the next step, the blastocyst is going to move and attach to the endometrium. So you can see here in this picture right here, the trophoblast, these cells have attached to the endometrium. Next, the trophoblasts are going to release enzymes which will digest the endometrium. So enzymes are going to come from the trophoblast and digest to digest the wall. And when they digest the wall of the endometrium, this will pull the blastocyst inside the endometrium. Now, in the endometrium, there are blood vessels of the mother. So these red structures here are all blood vessels from the mother. They have the blood. The blastocyst is going to move inside and meet the blood vessels of the mother. Now, why is this important? Because after it meets the blood vessel of the mother, this means the water and oxygen and food can now move from the mother to the blastocyst so that it can grow. When the blastocyst moves inside the endometrium, the inner cell mass are going to change. They're going to divide. These are the inner cell mass. They are going to change and divide to form 2 layers. Let me show you the layers. This yellow layer, yellow group of cells, some of their inner cell mass are going to divide and form this yellow layer. And some of them are going to divide to form this purple layer. Just like that. And these ones will divide and spread like this. They move out. So when they move out, they create a space right here. This is what? A space. So they have formed 2 layers. We call the yellow layer as hypoblast and the purple layer as epiblast. And the space which was created here is now called the amniotic cavity or amniotic space. Next, the blastocyst, which has 2 layers, epiblast and hypoblast, is going to now change to form a gastrula, which has 3 layers. Now, let's look at how that happens. So we have here the epiblast and the hypoblast. Now, the cells of the epiblast, these green cells, are now going to divide and move down. What will they do? They will divide and move down. And when they divide and move down, they form a new layer, this new layer which is yellow, between the green and the blue, between the epiblast and the hypoblast. Now, we went from 2 layers, epiblast and hypoblast, to 3 layers. Now, when we go from 2 layers to 3 layers, the layers are going to change names. Now, we call the epiblast as ectoderm, and we call the new layer, the yellow one, as mesoderm, and the hypoblast is now called endoderm. And this new structure over here is now called the gastrula, which has 3 layers. We call these 3 layers as the germ layers. They are very important. Why? Because these 3 layers are going to divide and form all the other cells in your body, the other organs. So let's take a quick look. The endoderm cells are going to divide to form some of the cells in your lungs, okay, which help you to breathe, and other types of cells. The mesoderm cells are going to divide to form your heart cells and other muscles in your body. And finally, the ectoderms are going to form what? Your skin cells and different type of organs. We call this as what? Organogenesis. It's what? They make organs in the body. Now, this picture right here shows the timeline of how the baby grows in the mother. After about 8 weeks, we start to call it the fetus. So what is a fetus? It's about an 8-week-old embryo, 8 to 9-week-old embryo. Now, this fetus needs oxygen from the mother, but how does it get it? It gets it through this cord or a tube which connects the fetus to the mother, and we call that the umbilical cord. If we cut open the umbilical cord, we're going to see some blood vessels. There are 2 of them. We have umbilical vein, which will bring oxygen and water and food to the fetus, and umbilical artery, which will take carbon dioxide and other waste products from the fetus to the mother. Around this area, we can see some structures which look like the fingers. They spread out, and we call that the chorionic villi. And they help to increase the surface area so that we can absorb more blood to the fetus. Now, this area is a structure we call placenta, which connects to the uterus. Now, around the fetus, we have a liquid or a fluid, okay, which protects the fetus from injury or shock. Okay, so this is what a long video and a lot of information, but I hope it can help you to understand more about how the fetus develops inside the mother, how we go from zygote to a fetus and finally to a baby. Thank you very much for watching, and see you.